In the 1980s and 1990s, the CIA was implicated in allowing cocaine to flow into American inner cities to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua. The crack epidemic destroyed black communities. When that story broke, there was outrage, investigations, admissions. Gary Webb, the journalist who exposed it, was destroyed professionally, but the story was out. People understood that the government had allowed drugs to devastate communities for political gain. Now apply that same logic to the 1800s. American families deliberately flooded China with opium for profit. Millions of Chinese lives destroyed. The Chinese economy crippled. And those families used the profits to build American institutions that still exist today. Where's the outrage? Where's the reckoning? Where's the accountability? There isn't any. Because the families that did it became so rich and powerful they could rewrite history. They could make sure their crimes were forgotten. And they could ensure their descendants lived in luxury, never confronting what their ancestors did. Let's be clear about the scale. Conservative estimates suggest that American firms made 50 or 100 million from the China opium trade between 1800 and 1860. That's 50 to 100 million in 1800s money. Adjusted for inflation, that's $1.5 to $3 billion in today's dollars. And that's just the profits. The total value of the opium moved was many times higher. This wasn't small-time smuggling. This was industrial-scale drug trafficking. Ships, warehouses, agents, bribes, a full logistical operation. The American firms involved employed thousands of people, Chinese middlemen, ship crews, Canton-based factors, Boston-based investors. It was a massive, organized criminal enterprise. Except it wasn't considered criminal in America. It was business. And the men who ran it were celebrated as successful merchants and captains of industry. Here's the modern equivalent to understand the scale. Imagine if a group of American billionaires today were caught running a cartel that flooded Mexico with fentanyl. Millions of Mexicans addicted, hundreds of thousands dead. And these billionaires used the profits to endow Harvard, fund political campaigns, and build museums. Then, 150 years later, their descendants are presidents, senators, and university chancellors. And no one talks about where the original money came from. That's what happened with the opium families. Except we're the descendants living in the world they built. And we're not supposed to ask questions. The Chinese remember. In China, the opium wars are a core part of national identity. They call it the century of humiliation, the period when Western powers forced opium on China and carved up the country. It's taught in every school. Every Chinese person knows that Britain and America poisoned their country for profit. And they know it led to colonization, wars, and millions of deaths. But in America, we don't teach it. Most Americans couldn't tell you what the opium wars were about. They certainly don't know that American families got rich from it. And they definitely don't know that those families still control enormous wealth and power today. The contrast is staggering. China remembers and teaches what was done to them. America forgets and whitewashes what we did. And the families that profited are happy to keep it that way. So what do we do with this information? First, we tell the truth. The Delano, Astor, Forbes, Perkins, Russell, Cabot, and Lowe families made their fortunes selling opium to China. Millions of Chinese were addicted and died. The Chinese economy was devastated, and American families got rich enough to found dynasties. Second, we acknowledge the hypocrisy. The same families that made fortunes from drugs, then criminalized drugs for everyone else. They used their wealth to push prohibition while hiding their own drug trafficking history. Third, we question the institutions built with that money. Yale, Harvard, Columbia, museums, hospitals, foundations, all of them funded, at least in part, by opium money. Should they acknowledge that? Should there be reparations? Should the families that still benefit be held accountable? These are uncomfortable questions, but they need to be asked. Because right now, these families are still powerful. The Delanos, the Forbes, the Russells, the Cabots, they're still part of America's elite. They still hold wealth and influence that came from Chinese opium money, and they've never had to answer for it. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's family made their fortune selling drugs to China. The Astors built their empire on opium. Forbes magazine exists because of opium profits. Skull and Bones was funded by opium money. Harvard, Yale, and Columbia have buildings paid for with opium profits. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history. The evidence exists in archives, letters, shipping records, and account books. Researchers have proven it. Books have been written. But the average American doesn't know because the story has been buried, whitewashed, erased from the official narrative. And the families that benefited don't want you to know because if you knew the truth, you'd realize that some of the most powerful, most respected, most influential families in American history are descended from drug traffickers. And the institutions they built, the universities, the foundations, the political dynasties, were all funded by poisoning millions of Chinese people. The truth is ugly, but it's the truth. And it's time people knew. If this changed how you see American history, subscribe. Because there are more stories like this, more truths that have been buried, more lies that need to be exposed. The opium family's got away with it for 200 years, but the truth doesn't stay hidden forever, and I'll keep digging it up.